The Crimson Ultimatum. Admiral Elena Vasquez pressed her palm against the reinforced viewport of Earth Defense Station Alpha 7, watching the stars twinkle in the endless black. 23 years of military service had taught her to appreciate these quiet moments before the storm. She had no idea that, in the next few minutes, everything humanity believed about their place in the universe would change forever. The alarm that shattered the silence wasn't the familiar drill pattern they practiced every month. This was the real thing. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison burst through the command center doors, his usually calm demeanor cracked with urgency. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately," he said, his voice tight with controlled panic. "Long-range sensors are picking up massive energy signatures at the edge of the solar system." Elena turned from the viewport, her gray eyes sharp with focus. "Define massive, Commander." 47 objects, each one roughly the size of Manhattan. They're not broadcasting any identification signals, and their technology signature is unlike anything in our databases. Morrison's hands moved quickly across his tablet, transferring the data to the main display. "Admiral, they appeared out of nowhere. No jump signature, no engine trails. They just materialized." The main screen filled with sensor data that made Elena's blood run cold. The objects were arranged in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming like polished crimson in the starlight. Each ship bristled with weapon emplacements that dwarfed Earth's most advanced military installations. "Time to Earth orbit at current trajectory?" Elena asked, though she already knew the answer would be bad. 6 hours, Admiral. Maybe less if they accelerate." Elena activated the emergency communication system, sending priority alerts to every military installation in the solar system. Within minutes, her screen filled with the faces of Earth's most senior military commanders. General Patricia Stone from Mars Colony, Admiral Chen Wu from the Jupiter Mining Consortium, and dozens of others whose expressions ranged from confusion to outright fear. "Ladies and gentlemen," Elena began, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded respect for over 2 decades. "We are facing what appears to be first contact with an alien species. Based on their approach vector and formation, I don't believe their intentions are peaceful." Before anyone could respond, every screen in the command center flickered and went dark. When they came back online, they showed something that would haunt humanity's nightmares for generations to come. Supreme Overlord Thex stood nearly 10 feet tall, his reptilian body covered in scales that shifted from deep red to black depending on the light. His head was elongated and crowned with bone ridges that spoke of evolution shaped by predation. When he moved, it was with the fluid grace of something born to hunt and kill. His eyes were the most terrifying feature of all, completely black, without iris or pupil, like staring into twin voids. "Inhabitants of the third planet," Thex's voice resonated through every communication device on Earth and throughout the solar system simultaneously. The translation was perfect, each human hearing the words in their native language. "I am Supreme Overlord Thex of the Veltar hegemony. Your species has been observed and found wanting." The alien's words carried undertones that made human listeners feel small and insignificant. This wasn't communication between equals. This was a superior being addressing lesser creatures. The Veltar hegemony spans 73 star systems and has brought order to over 200 species. Today, you will join our empire, or you will join the countless civilizations that chose extinction over wisdom. The screen shifted to show images of devastated worlds, once green planets reduced to ash and glass, the remnants of species who had dared to resist. Each image was accompanied by data showing the species' population before contact and the zeros that remained afterward. "You have 96 of your hours to comply with the following terms," Thex continued, his voice never changing from its emotionless monotone. "First, you will dismantle all military installations and surrender all weapons. Second, 60% of your population will report to designated collection points for transport to our labor worlds. Third, all technological advancement will cease, and your remaining scientists will work exclusively on projects approved by hegemony overseers. Elena felt the blood drain from her face as the demands continued. This wasn't conquest in any human sense of the word. This was the systematic destruction of everything that made humanity human. Fourth, your political systems will be dissolved and replaced by hegemony administrators. Fifth, reproduction will be regulated to maintain optimal labor populations. Sixth, your cultural practices, languages, and belief systems will be standardized according to hegemony efficiency protocols. The transmission showed a countdown timer, 96 hours, and counting down. When it reached 0, the consequences were clear. Submission or extinction. There would be no negotiation, no middle ground, no mercy for those who hesitated. Some among you may contemplate resistance, Fex said, and for the first time, Elena detected what might have been amusement in his alien voice. This would be inadvisable. The Veltar hegemony has conquered species with technology far superior to yours. Each believed they were special. Each learned the cost of defying the natural order. The transmission ended, leaving the command center in deathly silence. Elena looked around at her staff and saw her own shock reflected in their faces. This was beyond anything humanity had ever imagined or prepared for. Her communication system exploded with incoming calls. President Rebecca Hayes from Earth, Prime Minister Singh from the Mars colonies, Director Liu from the asteroid mining operations. Every leader in the solar system was demanding answers she didn't have. Admiral, Morrison said quietly, "What are our options?" Elena looked at the tactical display showing the alien fleet's position. By every conventional measure, humanity didn't have options. The Veltar ships outgunned Earth's entire space navy by several orders of magnitude. Their technology was centuries ahead of anything humans had developed. In a straight fight, humanity would be wiped out in minutes. But Elena Vasquez hadn't earned her rank by giving up when faced with impossible odds. "Get me Dr. Marcus Webb at Advanced Defense Research," she ordered, "and patch me through to Captain Sofia Rivera on the Hermes." Dr. Webb's face appeared on her screen within minutes. His wild gray hair and intense eyes had earned him the nickname Mad Marcus among his colleagues, but his reputation for impossible solutions was legendary. "Admiral, I assume this is about our new neighbors," Webb said without preamble. "I've been analyzing their energy signatures and ship configurations. The good news is they're using directed energy weapons and kinetic projectiles. The bad news is they're using directed energy weapons and kinetic projectiles that could vaporize our largest ships in seconds." "What about unconventional options, Doctor?" Elena asked. Webb's eyes lit up with the kind of dangerous enthusiasm that had led to his most controversial research projects. Now that's a different question entirely. Admiral, warfare has always evolved when one side finds ways to use the environment against their enemy. David versus Goliath wasn't one with superior technology. Before Elena could ask what he meant, another face joined the conference call. Captain Sofia Rivera commanded the ISV Hermes, humanity's fastest and most advanced scout ship. Her reputation for impossible maneuvers and tactical brilliance had made her a legend among space pilots. "Captain Rivera," Elena said, "I need to know something honestly. Can we fight them?" Sophia's dark eyes were steady as she considered the question. "In a conventional engagement, no, Admiral. We'd last maybe 10 minutes if we were lucky. But if you're asking whether we can fight them, that's a different question entirely." "Explain." "They expect us to meet them ship to ship, formation against formation, like some kind of medieval naval battle," Sophia said. "But space isn't an ocean, and we don't have to fight by their rules. We know every asteroid, every satellite, every piece of space debris in this system. They don't." Dr. Webb nodded enthusiastically. "Exactly. Captain Rivera, what's the one advantage we have that they can't anticipate?" "Desperation," Sophia replied without hesitation. "They've conquered other species who probably tried to preserve their civilizations to find some way to coexist. But they're not offering coexistence. They're offering slavery or death." Elena felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. It was the same feeling she'd had during her first combat command 20 years ago. The moment when fear transformed into focused determination. Dr. Webb, I need to know what unconventional options you're talking about. Captain Rivera, I need to know if your people are willing to try tactics that have never been attempted before. Admiral, Webb said, his voice taking on the tone he used when explaining his most radical theories. Every piece of civilian infrastructure in this system can be weaponized. Every mining laser can cut through hull plating. Every cargo hauler can carry explosives. Every communication satellite can be turned into a kinetic projectile. Sophia's smile was sharp as a blade. My squadron doesn't need better ships, Admiral. We need different tactics. Hit and run, strike from unexpected angles, use their size and formation discipline against them. Elena activated the general communication system, broadcasting to every military installation and civilian authority in the solar system. When the conference call expanded to include dozens of faces, she saw fear, confusion, and something else, the stubborn defiance that had carried humanity from caves to stars. Ladies and gentlemen, she began, in 93 hours, the Veltar hegemony expects humanity to surrender unconditionally. They expect us to accept slavery for our children and the destruction of everything we've built. She paused, letting the weight of those words settle before continuing. I propose we give them a different answer entirely. Dr. Webb, begin Operation Wildfire immediately. Convert every civilian facility that can be weaponized. Captain Rivera, organize every available pilot into Ghost Squadron. Use hit-and-run tactics. Strike from the asteroid field. Make them fight us on our terms. General Stone's voice crackled through the communication system from Mars. Admiral, the numbers don't lie. Even with everything you're proposing, we're outnumbered 47 to 1. Yes, General, we are, Elena replied. But they're expecting us to fight like every other species they've conquered. They're expecting traditional formations, traditional tactics, traditional surrender when faced with overwhelming odds. She looked directly into the camera, knowing her words were being broadcast to every human settlement in the solar system. The Veltar hegemony has never encountered a species that prefers death to slavery. They've never faced an enemy that will fight with tools they don't recognize as weapons. They've never met humans. The next 90 hours saw the most remarkable transformation in human history. Across the solar system, ordinary people became part of the greatest military mobilization ever attempted. Mining operations in the asteroid belt were converted into weapon manufacturing facilities. Cargo haulers were fitted with improvised armor and missile pods. Even luxury passenger liners were transformed into fast attack vessels. On Titan, engineering teams worked around the clock to convert methane processing plants into explosive manufacturing facilities. The giant refineries that had powered human expansion throughout the outer system were retooled to produce materials for Dr. Webb's most audacious plans. Captain Rivera coordinated with mining crews throughout the asteroid belt, positioning explosive charges and kinetic traps along likely approach routes. Her Ghost Squadron grew from 12 ships to over 300 as civilian pilots volunteered for what everyone knew was likely a suicide mission. Dr. Webb's team worked with manic intensity, converting communication satellites into guided missiles, transforming mining lasers into ship-cutting weapons, and preparing the most desperate gambit of all, using entire space stations as kinetic weapons. Admiral Elena Vasquez coordinated everything from her command center on Alpha 7, watching as humanity prepared to attempt the impossible. As the countdown timer reached its final hours, she received reports from across the solar system. Mars colony was ready. The Jupiter Mining Consortium was ready. The asteroid belt mining operations were ready. Humanity was as ready as it could be to face extinction. With 12 hours remaining on the Veltar ultimatum, Elena opened a final communication to every human in the solar system. Her words would be remembered for generations. My fellow humans, she began, in 12 hours, the Veltar hegemony expects our surrender. They believe we will choose slavery over death, submission over freedom. They have studied our transmissions, analyzed our technology, and concluded that we are just another species to be harvested. She paused, looking at the tactical display showing the alien fleet beginning to move toward Earth. They're about to learn why every species that has ever tried to enslave humanity has regretted it. We are not cattle to be herded. We are not resources to be harvested. We are humans, and we have never, in our entire history, accepted chains willingly. The timer reached 0. The Veltar fleet began its advance toward Earth, and humanity prepared to show the galaxy what humans do when faced with extinction. Fire in the void. Supreme Overlord Thex stood in the command center of his flagship, the Crimson Dominion, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The small blue-green world ahead showed no signs of organized resistance. No fleet formations moved to intercept his advance. No desperate last-minute communications begged for mercy or attempted negotiation. Pathetic, he muttered to his aide, a younger Veltar named Kresh. Even the Andrathi managed to field a fleet before we destroyed them. These humans appear to have given up entirely. Kresh studied the sensor readings with growing confusion. Overlord, our intelligence indicates the humans possess several hundred space-capable vessels. We're detecting only scattered energy signatures throughout their system. Thex's black eyes showed no concern. Hiding in asteroid fields and behind their moon, no doubt. Standard coward tactics. We'll root them out after we claim their homeworld. What the Veltar sensors couldn't detect was the network of modified mining equipment, converted civilian ships, and improvised weapons platforms that had been carefully positioned throughout the solar system over the past 4 days. Captain Sofia Rivera floated in the cramped cockpit of her modified interceptor, Hidden Strike, watching her tactical display from her position deep within the asteroid belt. Ghost Leader to all units, she whispered into her communicator. Enemy fleet is maintaining formation, just as predicted. They're coming straight down the shipping lane like a parade. Wait for my signal. 300 human pilots held their positions among the asteroids, their ships powered down to minimum levels to avoid detection. Dr. Webb's modifications had turned civilian mining vessels into something the Veltar had never encountered. Ships designed not to win battles, but to inflict maximum damage before being destroyed. Admiral Elena Vasquez monitored the battle from her hidden command bunker deep beneath the lunar surface. The Veltar had destroyed Alpha 7 station within minutes of entering Earth orbit, not knowing that Elena had relocated her command center days earlier. Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Morrison reported, enemy fleet is maintaining standard approach formation. 47 vessels in 3 tiers, just as their tactical doctrine predicts. Elena nodded grimly. Humanity's one advantage was that the Veltar had conquered so many species using the same tactics that they had become predictable. They expected their enemies to meet them in organized formations, to attempt traditional space combat, to eventually surrender when faced with superior firepower. They had never encountered an enemy that intended to turn the entire solar system into a weapon. Dr. Webb, are your surprises ready? Elena asked through the communication system. The scientist's voice crackled back from his position on Sarah's station. Admiral, we've had 4 days to prepare the most comprehensive booby trap in military history. Every asteroid, every satellite, every piece of space debris between here and Earth orbit has been weaponized. On the main tactical display, Elena watched as the Veltar fleet passed the orbit of Neptune, then Uranus, maintaining their arrogant formation. They were broadcasting demands for humanity's surrender on all frequencies, apparently believing that the absence of organized resistance meant victory was assured. They were about to learn the difference between absence of resistance and absence of organized resistance. Ghost Squadron, you are green for Operation Buzzsaw, Elena commanded. Captain Rivera smiled grimly as she powered up her engines. Around her, 300 modified ships came alive among the asteroids. Mining lasers designed to cut through solid rock had been fitted with targeting systems. Cargo haulers loaded with explosive mining charges had been converted into guided missiles. Even small personal craft had been turned into kinetic weapons. Ghost Squadron, this is Ghost Leader. Sophia's voice carried across the communication network. "Remember, we're not trying to win a fair fight. We're trying to make them bleed for every inch of space they claim. Hit hard, hit fast, and make every shot count." The first phase of humanity's counterattack began with what appeared to be a minor asteroid collision. One of the Veltar escort vessels reported debris impact, probably from routine space rock. The damage was minimal, barely registering on their sensors. What they didn't realize was that the debris had been a converted mining probe loaded with Dr. Webb's special modification, a crystalline explosive that would resonate with Veltar hull frequencies. The explosion that followed wasn't large by space combat standards, but it sent a shockwave through the Veltar formation that damaged sensors on 3 nearby ships. More importantly, it announced to the galaxy that humanity was going to fight. "All vessels, maintain formation," Thex commanded, though his aide Kresh detected the first note of uncertainty in the Overlord's voice. "Increase sensor suites. Apparently these humans have more spirit than intelligence." That was when Ghost Squadron struck. Sophia Rivera led her wing of 12 modified interceptors in a diving attack from above the orbital plane, using the glare of the sun to mask their approach. Her targeting system locked onto the bridge tower of a Veltar cruiser, and she fired her modified mining laser in a sustained beam that cut through alien armor like it was tissue paper. The cruiser's bridge exploded in a ball of superheated gas, sending the massive ship spinning out of control. Before the Veltar could react, Sophia's wing was gone, diving back into the debris field where their smaller ships could hide among the asteroids. "Contact! Contact!" Kresh shouted, his composed demeanor cracking. "Enemy attack craft, bearing 27 Mark IV. Estimate 12 vessels, unknown configuration." But Sophia's attack was just the beginning. As the Veltar formation tried to respond to the threat from above, Dr. Webb's converted cargo haulers struck from below. These massive civilian vessels, normally used to transport ore between mining stations, had been loaded with every explosive device humanity could manufacture. They didn't try to survive their attacks. Each cargo hauler rammed directly into a Veltar vessel at maximum velocity, their improvised explosive cargo turning them into kinetic bombs that could crack even alien armor. 3 Veltar ships were destroyed in the first minute of combat. 2 more were severely damaged and falling out of formation. The remainder began to break their perfect ranks, seeking targets they could engage with their superior weapons. That was exactly what Alina had been waiting for. "Phase 2, initiate," she commanded. Throughout the asteroid belt, hidden weapons platforms came online. These weren't military installations. They were converted mining stations, civilian refineries, and even luxury space habitats that had been evacuated and turned into weapons. Each one had been positioned to create overlapping fields of fire that would catch the Veltar ships no matter which direction they turned. Mining lasers designed to cut through asteroid rock focused their beams on Veltar hulls. Ore processing facilities launched streams of molten metal that acted like cosmic shotgun blasts. Even water recycling plants had been converted into weapons, launching clouds of ice particles that could damage sensors and communication arrays. Supreme Overlord Thex watched his formation dissolve into chaos as his ships tried to respond to attacks coming from every direction. These weren't the tactics of any species in his experience. The humans were fighting like they had nothing to lose, using weapons that barely qualified as military hardware. "Overlord," Kresh reported, his voice tight with strain. "We've lost 7 vessels and 14 more are reporting significant damage. Recommend we withdraw to optimal firing range and conduct orbital bombardment." "No." Thex's roar echoed through the bridge. "I will not be defeated by primitives using mining equipment. All vessels, advance to close range. Destroy everything that moves." It was exactly the reaction Alina had hoped for. The more aggressive the Veltar became, the more they would expose themselves to humanity's unconventional weapons. Captain Rivera regrouped with the survivors of Ghost Squadron for their final attack. Of her original 300 pilots, fewer than 100 remained operational. But they had accomplished something unprecedented. They had bloodied the nose of an empire that had conquered the galaxy. "Ghost Squadron, this is our last dance," Sophia announced. "Dr. Webb's main surprise is ready to deploy, but we need to get the Veltar fleet exactly where he wants them." She looked at her tactical display, calculating vectors and timing with the precision that had made her humanity's best pilot. The Veltar were pursuing her scattered forces toward Earth, their formation broken and their discipline compromised by anger. "Perfect. All remaining units, begin withdrawal toward Earth orbit. Make them follow us. Make them think they're winning." Dr. Webb watched from his command center on Ceres as his greatest gamble approached its critical moment. Over the past 4 days, his teams had done something that would have been considered impossible before the Veltar arrival. They had converted Earth's 3 largest orbital stations into kinetic weapons. Using modified cargo tugs and precise gravitational calculations, the massive stations, each one the size of a small city, had been moved into carefully calculated orbits. Now they hung in space like giant bullets, waiting for the perfect moment to fire. "Admiral," Webb reported to Alina, "the Veltar fleet is entering the target zone. Velocity and trajectory are optimal. We have one chance at this." Alina watched the tactical display as the alien ships pursued Ghost Squadron survivors toward Earth. The Veltar were so focused on destroying the last human resistance that they hadn't noticed the 3 massive objects waiting in their path. "Dr. Webb," she said quietly, "fire when ready." The 3 orbital stations were released simultaneously, their massive bulk accelerated by gravitational slingshots around Earth's moon. Each station massed over 50 million tons and was moving at a significant fraction of light speed by the time it reached the Veltar fleet. The first station struck the Veltar flagship dead center. The Crimson Dominion, pride of the Veltar hegemony, simply ceased to exist. The kinetic energy of the impact was so immense that it created a brief artificial star as matter was converted to energy. The second station clipped 3 Veltar cruisers, spinning them into each other in a collision that destroyed all 3 vessels. The third station missed its primary target but struck a destroyer squadron, vaporizing 4 ships instantly. In less than 30 seconds, humanity had destroyed over half the Veltar invasion fleet. Kresh, now the senior surviving Veltar commander, stared at his tactical display in shock. The humans had just accomplished something that should have been impossible. They had turned their own infrastructure into weapons capable of destroying capital ships. "All vessels," he commanded, his voice shaking. "Immediate withdrawal." These humans are insane." But Alina wasn't finished. As the surviving Veltar ships tried to retreat, she activated the final phase of humanity's defense. Throughout the solar system, every modified civilian ship, every converted mining platform, every improvised weapon that humanity had created opened fire simultaneously. The retreating Veltar found themselves running a gauntlet of unconventional weapons that struck from every direction. Captain Rivera led the final charge of Ghost Squadron, her surviving pilots following her in one last attack on the fleeing aliens. Her modified interceptor, its hull scarred by battle damage, and its weapons nearly depleted, fired its last mining laser into the engine compartment of a Veltar cruiser. The alien ship exploded in a cascade of secondary detonations, taking 2 escort vessels with it. Sophia's ship was caught in the blast wave, its hull cracking under the stress, but she managed to keep it together long enough to see the last Veltar vessels jump to hyperspace. The battle was over. Humanity had won. In the aftermath, as rescue teams searched for survivors and damage assessment began, the true cost of victory became clear. Over half of Ghost Squadron had been lost. 3 orbital stations were gone forever. Dozens of mining operations and civilian facilities had been destroyed or severely damaged. But the Veltar invasion fleet had been annihilated. Of the 47 ships that had arrived to conquer humanity, only 12 had escaped. More importantly, word of humanity's victory would spread throughout the galaxy. Admiral Alina Vasquez stood once again at the viewport of her temporary command center, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed quite so distant or hostile. Lieutenant Commander Morrison approached with the final casualty reports, but she waved them away. "Admiral," he said quietly, "we're receiving transmissions from across the galaxy. Apparently, news of our victory is spreading. Several species that have been fighting the Veltar are requesting contact." Elena smiled, an expression that held both satisfaction and sadness for those they had lost. "Patch them through, Commander. It seems humanity has just announced to the galaxy that we're ready to take our place among the stars." In the depths of space, the surviving Veltar ships carried news back to their empire that would change the balance of galactic power forever. They had encountered a species that preferred death to slavery, that could turn civilian infrastructure into weapons of war, and that fought with a desperation and creativity that no military doctrine could predict. The Veltar hegemony had demanded that humanity kneel. Instead, humanity had burned their fleets and announced to the galaxy that Earth's children would never again bow to tyrants. The age of human expansion among the stars was about to begin.